Everyone feared Dexter Morgan. But James Doakes? He feared him from day one. Not because of evidence, not because of logic, but because of something deeper, a feeling, an instinct. One that was born from a past so dark, the show barely scratched the surface. This is the part of Doakes' story you were never told, until now. Before Doakes ever joined Miami Metro, he served in an elite military unit known only as Special Forces. That title sounds clean, impressive, even heroic. But what does it actually mean? Let me ask you something. What kind of person do you become when your full-time job is to kill, stalk, and dismantle threats? Not with emotion, but with calculation. We're not talking about a regular soldier here. We're talking about black ops, high-risk missions, off-the-books assignments where morality is a luxury and survival is the only goal. This is the world James Doakes came from, a world where hesitation gets you killed, a world that conditions your instincts to override your conscience. It explains everything, from the way he walks into a room with silent alertness, to how he never cracks a smile unless he means it. Doakes doesn't just act like a man who's seen things. He moves like someone who's lived inside danger. And let's be honest, he didn't exactly carry trusting and approachable energy either. And even though the show never gives us direct flashbacks to Doakes' military life, it constantly hints at something darker. He refers to his past as classified. Deborah confirms he's seen active combat. That's not just a background, it's a psychological profile. You don't come back from war untouched, and Doakes didn't. He brought the battlefield home with him, and that's why, when he stood next to Dexter, he didn't just suspect something was off, he felt it. Because long before Miami Metro, James Doakes learned what evil looks like when it hides behind a mask, and this time, it was wearing a lab coat. But here's where it gets interesting. Doakes didn't just dislike Dexter, he felt him. There was no evidence, no confession, no body count, just a sensation that something was deeply wrong. In a world built on facts, forensics, and procedures, Doakes operated on something primal, instinct. You give me the creeps. You know that, Dexter. That line wasn't casual, it was loaded. It was the verbal equivalent of pulling a pin and placing the grenade on the table. But what exactly was Doakes picking up on? Let's break this down. Miami Metro wasn't filled with amateurs. These were trained professionals. People who had solved high-profile murders, dissected criminal profiles, studied behavioral patterns for a living, and yet, not a single one of them ever saw Dexter for what he truly was. Batista joked with him. Deb loved him like a brother. Even Laguerta, with all her political savvy, never looked past the donuts and polite small talk. Apparently, handing out donuts is enough to override years of law enforcement training. Doakes was the only one who didn't buy the act. Everyone else saw a polite lab tech with good manners and donuts. Doakes saw a walking red flag. Because Doakes wasn't operating within the same psychological framework. He didn't need proof to know something was off. He needed proximity. He didn't wait for patterns. He trusted the feeling in his gut, that quiet voice honed from years of combat and close encounters with actual killers. That's something you can't learn in a police academy. And let's face it, most of Miami Metro barely passed that part anyway. That kind of awareness comes from surviving in environments where people die if you don't see what's coming. But what if this ability wasn't just instinct? What if it was recognition? The possibility here is chilling. Maybe Doakes didn't just sense Dexter's darkness. Maybe he recognized it, because some part of him had it too. And if that's true, if darkness can recognize its own, then Doakes wasn't just the first to notice Dexter. He was the only one who could. This is where things start to twist. And suddenly, James Doakes isn't just the angry cop yelling at Dexter in the hallway. He becomes something much more unsettling, a mirror. "You're a killer," Dexter tells him. "You just hide behind a badge." And that line isn't just a taunt, it's a diagnosis. Let's look at the facts. Doakes didn't just carry a gun, he used it. Often. He had the highest number of officer-involved shootings in the entire department. That's not just a statistic, that's a red flag waving in plain sight. He was respected, sure, but also feared. Colleagues described him as volatile, aggressive, intimidating. He didn't de-escalate situations, he crushed them. Conflict resolution wasn't exactly his love language. So, here's the question. Was Doakes simply the kind of guy who got the job done, no matter the cost? Or was there something darker beneath the surface? A buried rage? A thrill in control? A hunger for violence that just happened to align, conveniently, with the law? And if you think this is all just overanalysis, let's go to the source material, the Dexter novels. In the books, Doakes is revealed to have his own version of a dark passenger. Not metaphorically, literally. That same compulsive inner voice that drives Dexter to kill, Doakes hears it too. He just channels it through legal systems and military doctrine instead of blood rituals and kill rooms. Now think about the implications of that. Maybe the reason Doakes hated Dexter so much wasn't just suspicion. It was recognition. He saw the same deadness in Dexter's eyes, the same mask of civility, the same razor-thin control over a storm of violence. And that terrified him. Or maybe it infuriated him, because Dexter surrendered to it. And Doakes spent his life trying to suppress it. Sometimes darkness doesn't just recognize darkness, it resents it. The show doesn't dive into Doakes' childhood in detail, but the fragments we do get are telling. We know his father was a butcher, and more importantly, that he was abusive. Now think about that. A boy raised in a home where violence wasn't just present, it was normal, where control came through intimidation, where love may have been conditional or even absent. That kind of environment doesn't just bruise you, it hardens you. So what happens to a kid raised like that? He learns not to flinch. He learns to spot danger before it strikes. And eventually, he becomes the kind of man who runs toward violence instead of away from it. First through the military, then through law enforcement, always fighting, always scanning, always on. But here's the twist. He doesn't become Dexter. He becomes the opposite. Because while Dexter embraces his darkness, Doakes tries to keep his locked away behind rigid codes, uniforms, and rank. The military taught him structure. The badge gave him boundaries. But inside, that early trauma still smoldered. And that's why Doakes doesn't just notice danger, he attracts it. His intensity, his hostility, his need to confront and dominate. It's not just aggression, it's armor, it's survival. So now ask yourself, was James Doakes truly dangerous? Or simply a man forged in fire, constantly trying not to burn the world around him? Maybe he wasn't the villain. Maybe he was the only one trying not to become one. They weren't just enemies, they were reflections of each other, both shaped by violence, both trained to operate without emotion, both driven by a need for control and justice. But the way they manifested those traits couldn't have been more different. Dexter wore his mask well, charming, calculated, careful. He operated in silence, killing under the radar, hiding behind routine and the illusion of normalcy. Doakes, on the other hand, never pretended. He confronted everything head-on, blunt, aggressive, and raw. He didn't mask his instincts. He weaponized them. That's why they couldn't coexist. They were cut from the same cloth, but stitched with opposite threads. And deep down, they both saw it. Dexter saw in Doakes what he might have been with a conscience. Doakes saw in Dexter what he could have become if he let go of control. Their dynamic wasn't just conflict, it was tension between two men wrestling the same inner beast, each in their own way. But here's the tragedy. One of them lied and survived. The other told the truth and paid the price. Doakes didn't die because he was wrong. He died because he was right, and he said it out loud. That's what makes it so brutal. He was completely right from the start. He saw through Dexter when no one else did, but instead of being praised, he was ridiculed, dismissed, and ultimately destroyed. Dexter knew Doakes was onto him, and instead of hiding, he got strategic. He lied about attending Narcotics Anonymous. He twisted Laguerta's loyalty. He baited Doakes into an outburst, knowing it would get him suspended. Every step was calculated, and it worked. But here's the thing. Doakes didn't give up. Even after being stripped of his badge, he kept digging. And that's when he found it. The blood slide box. Cold, clinical proof that Dexter was a serial killer. In that moment, Doakes held the truth in his hands. If he had acted just a little faster, if he'd taken it straight to forensics, the entire story might have ended right there. Dexter's mask would have shattered. The Bay Harbor butcher case closed. But Dexter got there first, and Lila made sure Doakes never spoke again. That's not just a loss, that's a miscarriage of justice wrapped in tragedy. The one man who told the truth died for it. In the novels, James Doakes doesn't die, but what happens to him might be even worse. He survives, yes, but he's left mutilated, disfigured, and permanently broken. Physically and mentally, he becomes unrecognizable, a man hollowed out by his relentless pursuit of the truth. His life becomes a cautionary tale. What happens when you get too close to a monster and live to tell about it? And in a way, that version of Doakes is even more disturbing than the one in the show, because it asks a deeper question. What if being right doesn't save you? What if uncovering the truth only guarantees your own destruction? That's what makes Doakes so fascinating. He wasn't the antagonist, he was the consequence, the walking embodiment of karma circling Dexter's world. He was justice with a pulse. But in both versions, book and show, justice doesn't win. It gets crushed, silenced, or mutilated. And maybe Dexter always knew that if anyone deserved to bring him down, it was Doakes. the only man he couldn't manipulate, the only man who saw him, truly saw him, without needing a single drop of evidence. That wasn't a rivalry. That was fate, denied. So here we are, knowing everything we now know about James Doakes, his military background, his violent upbringing, his unmatched instincts, and his tragic ending. Let me ask you this. Was James Doakes the most dangerous man in Miami, or the only one brave enough to see the truth? And more importantly, what does it say about us? That we rooted for Dexter to escape him? James Doakes didn't die because he was wrong. He died because he was right too soon. He was a soldier, a survivor, and maybe the only honest cop on the entire show. But now I want to hear from you. What untold story should we uncover next? Drop it in the comments. I'm reading everything.